Far to the south, past where most maps even bother to show detail, there lies a land that seems almost unreal, a continent of blinding white, endless wind, and silence so deep you can hear your own heartbeat. Antarctica, the bottom of the world, a place that feels still, eternal, and untouched. But what if I told you that beneath all that ice there's another story, one so strange it feels like it came from a dream? Because long before this frozen world became what it is today, Antarctica was a land of life, warmth, and mystery. Today, we think of Antarctica as pure desolation. Glaciers taller than skyscrapers, temperatures so low that even metal can snap like glass, and winds that can strip flesh from bone. Yet, beneath those miles of ice lies rock, real land, with valleys, mountains, and rivers long buried. Scientists have drilled deep into that frozen crust and pulled up secrets locked away for millions of years. What they found tells us something extraordinary. This was once a land filled with green forests, rushing streams, and animals walking freely under a golden sun. It's almost impossible to imagine. The Antarctica we know now, the one that feels like another planet, used to be full of trees, massive, ancient trees that reached high into the warm air. There were ferns the size of houses, flowers blooming under long summer days, and rivers winding across a landscape rich with life. Even now, deep within the ice, scientists find traces of pollen, bits of wood, and fossilized leaves. The evidence whispers of a time when the South Pole was not a place of death, but of abundance. You can picture it if you try. The air is thick and warm. Giant insects buzz between tree trunks. Reptiles sunbathe on the banks of wide rivers, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the gentle call of birds long extinct. The sky never truly darkens. Antarctica, back then, was still close enough to the equator to enjoy long stretches of daylight. The seasons were mild, the seas alive with fish, and every inch of the land pulsed with energy. But time moves differently for Earth. Continents drift like slow ships on a restless ocean. Antarctica, once part of a grand supercontinent called Gondwana, began to move south. Year by year, century by century, it drifted toward the pole. Slowly, the air cooled. The forests began to thin. Creatures adapted, or vanished. What was once a tropical world started its long descent into silence. To think of this place now, covered in ice thicker than any mountain, and realize it once held rainforests, is a strange kind of wonder. It reminds us that Earth has worn many faces, that the frozen, lifeless continent at the bottom of the world was once warm, breathing, and green, that, beneath its stillness, something ancient waits, memories of sunlight and the echo of rivers that no longer flow. And maybe that's what draws people to Antarctica, even now, the sense that it hides something enormous, something just out of reach. It's not just a place, it's a mystery written in ice. Every gust of wind, every shifting glacier, every quiet crack that echoes through the snow feels like the planet itself whispering, "You don't know the whole story yet." Scientists who study this land often describe it as humbling. When they stand on the endless white plains, it feels like standing on another world. The ice stretches for thousands of miles, reflecting sunlight until it blinds the eyes. And beneath it all are mountains taller than the Alps, valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, and perhaps even remnants of life that time forgot. It's like a sleeping giant, a whole world frozen in place, holding on to its secrets. And the strangest thing, in its own quiet way, Antarctica still moves. The ice shifts. The ground below slowly slides toward the sea. Beneath kilometers of ice there are hidden lakes that have never seen the sky, sealed off for millions of years. Some scientists believe that within those lakes, microscopic life might still exist, creatures that have adapted to complete darkness and eternal cold. If so, they would be among the oldest survivors on Earth, hidden right beneath our feet. It's strange to think that the most remote, lifeless place on Earth might actually be full of life, just not the kind we can easily see. Antarctica is a paradox. It is both dead and alive, ancient and ever-changing, silent yet speaking through every gust of wind. Its stillness hides movement, and its emptiness hides memory. Sometimes, when explorers camp in the open plains, far from any sign of civilization, they say the land seems to hum. The sound isn't from the wind or the ice shifting. It's deeper than that, a low vibration that feels alive. Maybe it's the sound of the earth remembering. Or maybe it's our own minds, struggling to comprehend the age and power of the world beneath our boots. As night falls in Antarctica, the sky turns a color unlike anywhere else. The stars shine sharper, the air clearer, and the auroras dance like ghosts above the ice. It's a strange beauty, lonely but infinite. You can almost feel the weight of history pressing down, layer by layer, frozen through time. This is the land of secrets, a place where the past is literally buried beneath your feet, where every gust of wind carries whispers of what once was. Before the cold, before the emptiness, before the endless night, this was a land of forests and rivers and life. And though the world has changed beyond recognition, those secrets still linger, waiting patiently under the ice for us to listen. Before the ice came, Antarctica was a world of light. It's strange to think about, isn't it? That the coldest place on Earth was once a warm, green paradise. But millions of years ago, the land at the bottom of the world looked nothing like the frozen continent we know today. There was no snow stretching endlessly to the horizon, no howling wind carving through glaciers. Instead, there were rivers winding through valleys, trees swaying in the breeze, and animals walking beneath the soft, golden sun. Scientists know this because the evidence is still there, locked in the rocks, buried in the ice. When they drill deep into the ground, they find fossilized roots, ancient pollen, even pieces of wood. Each fragment tells a story of a time when Antarctica was alive. Imagine forests thick with ferns, moss-covered ground, and towering trees that reached up toward a sky that never quite grew dark. The air would have been cool and damp, filled with the scent of rain and growing things. Back then, Antarctica sat much farther north than it does now, closer to the equator. The climate was mild, even tropical in some parts. Rain fell often, feeding wide rivers that carried life through the land. Giant insects buzzed through the air, and amphibians croaked near the water's edge. There were no humans yet, only a world ruled by nature in its purest form. In the gentle warmth of those ancient days, Antarctica's forests would have been alive with sound. The rustle of leaves, the call of distant animals, the hum of life in motion. The land itself would have felt soft underfoot, damp with dew, covered in fallen leaves. You could walk for miles beneath the canopy, sunlight filtering through the branches, painting the ground in dappled gold. The idea feels almost magical now, knowing that all of it lies beneath endless miles of frozen silence. Some of the plants that once grew there have no modern equivalent. Scientists have found fossils of trees that could survive months of twilight, trees that somehow kept growing even when the sun barely rose. They adapted to long winters and gentle summers, thriving in a rhythm few living things could handle today. Their roots dug deep into rich soil, drawing life from a world still young and vibrant. And the animals? They were strange and wonderful. Early reptiles wandered through the undergrowth, their scales glistening in the humid air. Small mammals scurried across the forest floor, hiding among ferns. In the rivers, fish swam lazily beneath the surface, feeding on insects that drifted by. Even the skies were alive with movement, ancient birds gliding over wide, glassy lakes that reflected the emerald green of the trees. But there was something special about this land. It sat at the edge of the world, balanced between light and dark. Even in its warmest days, Antarctica experienced long periods of twilight, when the sun would hover near the horizon for weeks at a time. The people of today might call it strange, but to the creatures of that age, it was normal. They lived by a different clock, one set not by hours or seasons, but by the quiet rhythm of the Earth's tilt. It's beautiful to think about, a place where time felt slower, where day and night blurred together, and the air carried a deep stillness between each breath of wind. If you stood there millions of years ago, you might have heard the low rumble of distant volcanoes or the splash of water against stone. The world was alive in a way that feels almost impossible now, under so much ice. Sometimes when scientists uncover a piece of that buried forest, a leaf, a seed, or even a tiny insect trapped in amber, they describe a kind of awe. Because it's not just a fossil. It's a message from a world that should not exist. A memory of warmth preserved in a place now locked in eternal cold. It reminds us that the Earth has always been changing, that nothing stays the same forever. It's a quiet lesson, one whispered through time. What we see today is only one version of the world. Long ago, even this place of endless frost was green, soft, and full of life. The ice is only a layer, not the whole story. Beneath it, the old world still sleeps, perfectly preserved. And maybe that's what makes Antarctica so fascinating. It is not just the idea of a frozen land. It is the thought that under that frozen shell lies something alive in memory. Every grain of snow that falls there settles over a story millions of years in the making. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine walking through that ancient forest. The air feels heavy with moisture, warm but gentle. You hear leaves rustling, water flowing, birds calling faintly from the distance. The light filters softly through the trees, golden and calm. For a moment, there's no ice, no wind, no emptiness. Just peace, just the slow heartbeat of a living world. But the Earth never stays still. The same forces that created that paradise were already moving, shifting, preparing to change everything. Far beneath the soil, the continent itself was drifting, slowly, quietly toward a colder destiny. The forests that once seemed eternal would one day vanish. The rivers would freeze, the sunlight would fade, and the land would fall into a long, deep sleep under a crown of ice. Still, in this moment before the frost, Antarctica was alive. A strange, gentle world far from the rest of the Earth, but rich in beauty all its own. Its warmth, its color, and its sound still echo faintly beneath the ice today, waiting to be remembered. Millions of years ago, the Earth looked nothing like it does today. The continents were separated by wide oceans or arranged in the familiar shapes we see on modern maps. Instead, they were joined together in one vast landmass, a supercontinent known as Gondwana. It stretched from pole to pole, a single mighty body of land that carried forests, deserts, and seas all in one. And somewhere near its heart lay the land that would one day become Antarctica. Back then, this ancient world was warm and full of life. Gondwana was home to strange creatures, towering trees, and rivers that ran through endless plains. But even as life flourished, slow and silent forces were already at work beneath the surface. The Earth's crust was restless. Deep below, molten rock moved in great currents, shifting the continents ever so slightly. It was a movement so gradual no creature could ever notice, but unstoppable all the same. Over millions of years, Gondwana began to break apart. The land that would become Africa started to drift north. India tore itself free and began its long journey toward Asia. South America began to pull away, its eastern edge leaving behind deep scars that would become the ocean floor. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Antarctica began to slide south. It was the beginning of a journey that would change everything. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The forests still grew. The rivers still flowed. Animals roamed freely across the land, unaware that the ground beneath them was moving. But with every passing millennium, the air grew cooler, the days shorter. The sun hung lower in the sky, Antarctica, carried by the slow engine of plate tectonics, was drifting toward the pole, a place where the sun would one day vanish for months at a time. Imagine standing there millions of years ago watching this happen in impossible slow motion. The stars above shift ever so slightly each century. The world beneath your feet creeps onward, invisible but relentless. It's strange to think that continents move at all, but they do, at the pace of a fingernail growing, maybe a few centimeters each year. Yet, over time, those tiny movements change the entire face of the Earth. Antarctica's journey south was not a peaceful one. As it drifted, it collided with other plates, raising mountain ranges that still hide beneath the ice today. Volcanoes erupted, sending plumes of ash into the air. The climate began to change. The lush forests that had once thrived in warmth began to wither. Leaves fell and did not return. The soil froze harder each year, and the rivers began to thin under sheets of frost. But even as the world cooled, life clung on. Plants evolved to survive long dark winters. Animals grew thicker fur or learned to burrow deep underground. The land adapted as it moved, as if it knew where it was headed. There was beauty in that endurance, a quiet persistence that feels almost human. Slowly, Gondwana itself was gone. The continents had drifted apart, scattered across the globe like pieces of a broken mirror. Where once there had been unity, now there were oceans. And Antarctica, left alone at the bottom of the world, began to freeze. It didn't happen all at once. For millions of years, the climate wavered between warmth and cold. There were still brief ages when green returned, when sunlight stretched across the land and life dared to bloom again. But the drift continued. Each passing era pulled Antarctica deeper into isolation, farther from warmth, closer to the long shadow of the pole. Sometimes, when scientists map the rock formations beneath the ice, they can trace those ancient scars, the lines where continents once touched. You can almost imagine them as the fingerprints of time itself, proof that the Earth is alive and always changing. The land beneath the ice tells stories of tropical forests, volcanic plains, and shifting seas. It's strange, almost comforting, to think that even a place as silent as Antarctica has traveled so far. Every continent on Earth carries its own history, written in stone, but Antarctica's is the quietest of them all. It moved more slowly, drifted farther, and ended in solitude. Beneath the ice lies a record of everything it's been. Tropical paradise, volcanic island, temperate refuge, and, finally, a frozen kingdom. Even now, the continent hasn't stopped moving. It still drifts, slowly, ever so slightly, shifting the shape of the Earth beneath our feet. That's one of the humbling truths of geology. The world never stands still. Mountains rise, oceans widen, and land slides into new places. The surface of the planet is like the surface of a vast, restless ocean, always flowing, always changing, even when we can't see it. It's easy to forget that the ground beneath us is alive, that continents themselves are travelers, forever wandering across the face of the planet. Antarctica's story is proof of that. It is the ultimate wanderer, a piece of Earth that has traveled from green warmth to white emptiness. And though it seems frozen and still, its heart still moves, inch by inch, deeper into the quiet south. Some nights, when the wind sweeps across the ice and the auroras shimmer above, you might feel it, the slow heartbeat of the land itself. It's as if Antarctica remembers where it came from, the long journey it's taken, and the forests it once knew. Beneath miles of ice, under the silence of millennia, the continent still dreams of sunlight and rain. So, when you think of Antarctica now, don't just picture an empty desert of snow. Picture a traveler, a continent with a memory, a land that has seen warmth, beauty, and life, and carries those memories, frozen but not forgotten, deep within its core. Before the ice swallowed everything, Antarctica was a green, breathing world. It feels impossible now, looking at the endless white of today, But if you could peel back the layers of ice, you'd find traces of forest sleeping beneath it, forests that once stretched for miles, filled with life. It wasn't the kind of life we see now, with penguins and seals and cold silence. No, this was a world of ferns and towering trees, of insects and reptiles, of color and sound. A world that, in its own strange way, was almost tropical. Imagine walking through one of those ancient forests. The air is thick with moisture, heavy and warm. The ground is soft beneath your feet, covered in moss and fallen leaves. All around you, trees reach high into the air. Not the thin, brittle kind that struggle in cold climates today, but thick, sturdy trunks with wide leaves that drink in the light. Sunlight filters through the canopy in golden beams, catching the fine mist that hangs between the branches. Everything smells of earth and green life. Back then, Antarctica sat closer to the equator, part of a world that shared warmth between its continents. The seasons were gentle, and the land was alive. Giant tree ferns grew in clusters, spreading wide fronds that caught the sunlight like open hands. Conifers, early relatives of pine trees, stretched toward the sky, their roots tangled deep in the rich soil. There were even flowering plants, some of the earliest on Earth, blooming in colors that no one alive today has ever seen. The forests were alive with movement. Small lizards and amphibians darted between the roots. Dragonflies with wingspans as wide as a human hand drifted through the humid air. Ancient beetles crawled across the bark of trees, while frogs croaked from hidden pools fed by winding streams. Every sound was soft but constant, the rhythm of a land that had found balance in warmth and water. And among the undergrowth there were mammals, too. Tiny, furry creatures that scurried through the ferns, nibbling on leaves and hiding from the larger reptiles that hunted them. In the branches above, early birds sang, their voices echoing faintly through the forest. Life here was simple but rich, every creature playing its part in a vast, living web. Even the nights were full of life. When the sun dipped low, the forest didn't fall silent. It changed. The air grew cooler, the sounds softer. Insects glowed faintly in the darkness, lighting the air with a gentle bioluminescent shimmer. Somewhere, water dripped slowly from a leaf, a sound so small it echoed in the stillness. The forest breathed, steady and slow, like the earth itself was alive and aware. Scientists have found fossilized wood buried deep under the Antarctic ice, wood that still holds the memory of growth rings, proof that these trees once reached high into the air. They've uncovered imprints of leaves so delicate you can still see their veins, pressed into rock like pages of an ancient book. Some of these fossils are so well preserved that even their colors remain faintly visible, like whispers of green trapped in stone. The creatures that roamed these forests were unlike anything alive today. There were early amphibians that spent part of their lives in the rivers and part on land. There were primitive reptiles with long necks and thick scales that glistened in the humid air. And later, much later, when dinosaurs began to appear, they too wandered here, smaller species that could survive the long months of twilight that came as Antarctica drifted slowly toward the pole. It's strange to think that dinosaurs once walked where now only penguins waddle. But they did. Fossils of them have been found. Small plant-eating dinosaurs, feathered and adapted to cold nights, living in a land that was beginning to cool but still alive with greenery. They lived through long, dim winters and bright, endless summers, in a rhythm unlike anywhere else on Earth. The forests of ancient Antarctica were not just alive, they were resilient. Even as the world began to cool, life found ways to adapt. Trees learned to store energy through months of darkness. Plants evolved to survive freezing nights. It was as if the land itself refused to give up its life, even as the first whispers of ice crept closer with each passing age. And beneath all that beauty, deep in the soil and rivers, tiny changes were taking place. The earth was shifting. The air was cooling. The forest didn't know it yet, but they were living in borrowed time. Still, for millions of years they flourished. quiet, steady, and green. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine it. The sound of soft rain falling through leaves, the hum of insects and the faint croak of frogs, the warmth of the air, the golden glow of sunlight through mist. This was Antarctica once, a place of life, not death, a land that breathed, where every inch of soil was alive with roots and growth. And now, all of it sleeps beneath the ice. The trees, the rivers, the bones of animals that once lived and died in those forests, all frozen in time, perfectly preserved. When scientists dig down and find a leaf, it feels like the planet itself is remembering. Each discovery is a quiet whisper from the past, a reminder that even the coldest, emptiest places once held warmth and beauty. The lost forests of Antarctica remind us of how fragile life is, but also how enduring. They tell us that the Earth changes, always, and that even when something disappears, its memory remains, waiting, hidden under the surface. Maybe one day the ice will melt just enough to show us more. Until then, the forests remain there, sleeping, dreaming of sunlight and rain, beneath the quietest place on Earth. When we imagine dinosaurs, we often picture them under blazing sunlight, roaming open plains, basking in warmth, surrounded by lush, green jungles. But not all of them lived that way. Some dinosaurs made their home in one of the strangest places imaginable, ancient Antarctica. It's almost hard to believe, but long before it became a frozen wasteland, the southernmost continent was alive with the sound of footsteps, breathing, and the quiet rhythm of life moving through the cold twilight. Back then, Antarctica was still connected to other continents, part of a vast landmass where dinosaurs roamed freely. The air was cooler, the seasons longer, and the light behaved in ways that no creature elsewhere had to endure. For months, the sun would barely rise, hanging low on the horizon, casting a soft, golden glow over the land. And then, for months more, it would vanish completely, leaving only darkness and the pale shimmer of the stars. Yet, life continued. Somehow, against all odds, dinosaurs adapted. Fossils found deep within the transantarctic mountains and along the coasts tell the story of creatures that learned to survive where sunlight was scarce and the cold pressed in from every side. These weren't the massive beasts of tropical lands, but smaller, hardier species, creatures that relied on instinct, warmth, and patience. Paleontologists have discovered bones and footprints of herbivorous dinosaurs that once grazed among the conifer trees and fern fields of ancient Antarctica. Some were early relatives of the hypsilophodonts, small, fast-moving plant eaters with strong legs and keen eyes. They may have lived in groups, huddling together for warmth when the nights grew long and the forests fell into shadow. Their senses would have sharpened in the twilight, their bodies adapted to store heat and move silently through the darkness. Then there were the predators. Sleek, agile hunters that stalked through the half-light, their eyes reflecting the faintest glow of the moon. Scientists believe some of them might have evolved larger pupils or better night vision to track prey through the dim forest. In this world of half-day and half-night, survival meant adaptation. Every heartbeat, every step, was part of a delicate balance between endurance and hunger. But perhaps the most fascinating part of their story is not just how they lived, but how they endured the dark. Imagine months with no sunrise, only endless night. The forests, covered in frost, grew still. The rivers slowed. The air turned quiet, heavy. Yet these creatures stayed. They didn't migrate north like birds do now. They didn't hibernate completely. They learned to live within the rhythm of darkness. Their bodies slowed, their energy conserved, their instincts guiding them through the deep polar night. It's humbling to think of these dinosaurs standing among the trees, their breath misting in the cold air, the faint shimmer of auroras dancing above them. The silence would have been almost total, only the creak of ice, the distant sound of wind through branches, and the soft shuffle of feet moving through snow. In that stillness, life persisted quietly, patiently, waiting for the return of the sun. And when it finally came, It must have felt like rebirth. The sun climbing higher, the light growing warmer, the forests waking with a rustle of leaves and the first call of birds. The snow melted from the branches, rivers began to flow again, and for a brief time the land returned to life and color. The dinosaurs would emerge from their hidden places, feeding, moving, living in a rush before the light faded once more. It was a cycle of endurance, a dance between survival and stillness. Scientists studying the fossils of these creatures have found growth rings in their bones, much like the rings in a tree. These rings show periods of fast growth during the bright summer months and slow, almost paused growth during the long, dark winters. It's as if their very bodies recorded the rhythm of the land, the heartbeat of a world that lived in two extremes. It's easy to think of Antarctica as lifeless now, but those bones beneath the ice prove otherwise. They remind us that life doesn't only belong to the easy places. Sometimes it thrives in the hardest ones. These dinosaurs were proof of that. They didn't just exist. They adapted, learned, and flourished in a world that tested every living thing. Even now, when scientists stand on the frozen plains and uncover a fossil, they often pause. They look out across the endless white and imagine what this place once looked like. The same land, but alive. They picture a herd of small, feathered dinosaurs moving through the snow-dusted forest, their breath steaming, their eyes glinting with quiet intelligence. They imagine the sound of distant footsteps, the rustle of leaves, and the echo of something ancient, something that still lingers in the bones buried deep below. It's strange, isn't it? To think that beneath the frozen silence of Antarctica, the memory of dinosaurs still sleeps. Their bones are time capsules, frozen stories of a world that shouldn't have existed, but did. A world where warmth once touched the southern pole, where the stars burned low, and where life proved again and again that it could adapt to anything. Close your eyes and imagine standing there. The aurora glows faintly overhead, painting the snow in soft colors. The forest stands silent, dark, and still. Somewhere in the distance, a creature moves, a faint crunch of snow, a flicker of movement between the trees. It's gone in an instant, leaving only the whisper of the wind and the quiet hum of the earth beneath your feet. This is Antarctica's past, mysterious, patient, and endlessly alive beneath its layers of ice. The seas around ancient Antarctica were once full of life, bursting with movement and color. Today, those waters are silent, home to icebergs and whales gliding through blue darkness. But millions of years ago, before the cold set in, they were warm and shallow, glowing with sunlight and teeming with creatures unlike anything alive today. It was an age of giants, and the ocean was their kingdom. If you could travel back there, the first thing you'd notice is the sound. Not the sound of waves or wind, but the hum of life beneath the surface. A world alive and breathing, full of clicks, rumbles, and distant calls. The water was thick with plankton, tiny organisms that glittered like dust in a beam of light. They fed fish, and those fish fed larger creatures, and so on, layer upon layer of life in constant motion. Somewhere in the deeper parts of these ancient seas, enormous reptiles swam, descendants of the land dwellers who had once ruled the continents. They weren't dinosaurs, not exactly, but their size was just as impressive. They were mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, creatures with long necks, paddle-like limbs, and jaws built for hunting. They glided through the water with eerie grace, their bodies moving in slow, powerful waves. The plesiosaurs, with their long necks and small heads, hunted quietly, sneaking up on schools of fish or smaller marine reptiles. The mosasaurs, on the other hand, were built for speed and power. Their tails propelled them like torpedoes, and their jaws could crush bone. When they moved through the water, everything else gave way. These were the predators of their time, the ocean's rulers before whales existed. Closer to the shore, the reefs bloomed with life. Coral-like structures, primitive and strange, built homes for countless small creatures. Crustaceans scuttled between them. Fish of bright colors darted in and out, and the sunlight danced across their scales like fire. Everything moved in harmony. The ocean had a rhythm, a slow, eternal pulse that carried through every drop of water. And yet, beneath all that beauty, change was coming. As the world's temperatures were shifting, slowly cooling, and the first hints of Antarctica's future could already be felt. But for now, the sea remained a haven, a place where life could grow large and wild. In those warm waters swam creatures that would one day give rise to the great mammals of the sea. Early ancestors of whales began to appear, though they still looked nothing like the gentle giants we know today. They had legs, for one thing, strong, stubby limbs that helped them crawl onto shore if they needed to. Their bodies were long and powerful, their nostrils still near the front of their heads, and their teeth were sharp, made for gripping fish. Imagine one of these early proto-whales gliding silently beneath the surface, its body sleek and smooth, its movements slow and steady. It rises toward the light, breaks the surface with a quiet breath, and then sinks back down into the deep. Its world is warm, rich, and full of sound. Around it, schools of fish flash like silver ribbons, and in the distance, a plesiosaur turns in the gloom. These were the first hints of what was to come, the ancestors of creatures that would one day rule the oceans long after the reptiles were gone. When you think about it, that's one of nature's most fascinating patterns. When one era ends, another begins, often quietly, without anyone noticing at the time. The end of the reptiles was the beginning of the mammals. As Antarctica continued to drift toward the pole, the waters began to cool. Not all at once, but gradually over millions of years. The warm seas grew darker, colder. The reefs began to fade. The great reptiles disappeared, one by one, replaced by smaller, more adaptable creatures. The early whales survived. They evolved. They changed their shape, their habits, their world. And slowly, the age of reptiles gave way to the age of whales. Even today, when whales pass through the icy waters of the Southern Ocean, they swim over the same places where those ancient giants once lived. Beneath them lie the fossils of their ancestors, bones that tell the story of evolution written in the language of stone. Every vertebra, every tooth, every tiny fragment of fossil carries part of that ancient memory. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine it. The Antarctic seas before the ice. The water is clear and green. Sunlight ripples across the sand below. In the distance, a plesiosaur glides past, its long neck curving gracefully as it moves. A school of fish darts between coral spires, flashing like liquid light. And far beyond, a shadow moves, a creature that is not quite a whale, not quite a land animal, but something in between. It swims with a purpose, slow and powerful, unaware that it's part of a story that will continue long after it's gone. There's something strangely comforting about that idea, that life never truly stops. It only changes shape. The ocean, after all, has always been a place of transformation. Every drop of water that touched the fins of ancient reptiles now flows through the bodies of whales. Every grain of sand that felt the shadow of a plesiosaur now lies under the frozen sea. The past and present are still connected, flowing together quietly, like currents under the ice. So, when you picture the seas of Antarctica, don't just think of cold silence. Think of warmth, color, and movement. Think of giants gliding through green water, the heartbeat of the ocean echoing all around them. Those ancient waves still move, even now, carrying whispers of the past through time itself. It's strange to think that the largest animals ever to live on Earth began their story on land. The whales we know today, those enormous, graceful creatures gliding through the deep, are descended from something that once had legs, lungs made for breathing air, and a life that unfolded beneath the sun rather than under the waves. Their journey from land to sea is one of nature's most beautiful and mysterious transformations. It began around 50 million years ago, long after the age of dinosaurs had ended. The Earth was warm, covered in green forests, wide rivers, and shallow coastal seas. In what is now Pakistan and India, near the shores of an ancient ocean called the Tethys Sea, lived a creature called Pachycetus. It was small compared to modern whales, about the size of a large dog with long legs and a sleek body. At first glance, it looked like a land mammal, because it was. But its bones, especially those around its ears, told a different story. They carried the early signs of adaptation to water. Pachycetus was the first known member of the whale family. It hunted near the water's edge, slipping between land and shallow pools, catching fish and small animals. Its ears could sense vibrations through water. Its limbs were strong but built for swimming as much as walking. It was, in every way, a creature between two worlds. Over the next few million years, its descendants ventured further into the sea. They became more streamlined, more aquatic. Another species appeared, Ambulocatus, whose name means the walking whale. Imagine something like a crocodile crossed with an otter. Long, powerful, with webbed feet and a tail built for swimming. It could still crawl onto land, but it moved through the water with ease, undulating its spine and using its strong back legs to push forward. It lived a life half in the water, half out, always moving toward the waves. The Earth was changing too. The Tethys Sea was rich with life, and those early whales found plenty to eat. They learned to hunt fish, to dive deeper, to use sound instead of sight in murky waters. Over time, their legs grew shorter, their tails stronger, and their bodies longer and smoother. The nostrils that once sat near the front of their heads began to move upward, inch by inch, toward the top, where one day they would become blowholes. Another creature came next, Rhodhocetus. It was more adapted to the sea, with limbs shaped like paddles and a tail that could move up and down, much like a modern whale's fluke. It likely spent most of its life in the water, coming ashore only to rest or give birth. Its eyes were positioned higher on its head, giving it a wide view of the surface while it swam. Its body, sleek and muscular, glided through warm coastal seas that shimmered in the sunlight. It's hard not to imagine what that might have looked like. A group of Rhodhocetus swimming together near the coast, their long bodies cutting through clear water, their dark shapes gliding below schools of fish. They were no longer land animals, not really, but they weren't yet whales as we know them. They were something in between, an echo of the past and a whisper of what was to come. As millions of years passed, evolution continued its slow work. The whales' hind legs shrank, their front limbs became true flippers, and their tails grew stronger. Their lungs adapted for long dives, their hearing became sharper underwater, and their bodies became perfectly built for a life of endless swimming. The land was gone to them now. The ocean had claimed them completely. Then came Basilosaurus. The name means king lizard, though it wasn't a lizard at all. It was one of the first true whales. It could grow up to 60 feet long, its long, snake-like body winding through the sea like a living ribbon. It was a powerful predator, with sharp teeth and a hunger for fish and smaller whales. It could no longer walk, but deep within its body it still carried the bones of its past. Tiny hind limbs, useless now, but still there, hidden reminders of the legs its ancestors once used to walk on land. If you look at a modern whale skeleton today, you can still find those bones. Small, floating fragments near the pelvis, serving no purpose. They are silent witnesses of the journey that began with Pachycetus, the landwalker. Every whale alive carries that history inside its body. There's something hauntingly beautiful about that, isn't there? To think that every time a whale breaches, lifting its massive body out of the water and crashing back down, it's moving through millions of years of memory. From muddy riverbanks to open ocean, from paws to fins, from breath to song. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was behavioral. Whales learned to navigate the vast oceans using sound, developing the ability to communicate across great distances. Their songs, deep and resonant, became their way of connecting in the endless blue. Some scientists believe those early forms of whale communication began millions of years ago, even before the species we know today appeared. The ocean became their language, their home, their world. Close your eyes and imagine the final step of that transformation. The warm Tethys Sea glows golden under a setting sun. The waves are calm. Beneath them, a young Basilosaurus swims slowly, its massive body moving with the grace of something born to the water. Its flippers spread like wings. Its long tail moves with effortless rhythm. It dives deep into the blue silence where light fades and only sound remains. It doesn't know it, but it is part of something eternal, the beginning of the whales we know today. Millions of years later, its descendants will travel the world's oceans. They'll sing to one another through water colder than ice, feed in darkness, give birth beneath the waves, and carry the memory of that first step into the sea in every movement. The birth of whales is not just a story of evolution. It's a story of letting go, a return to something deeper, older, and more profound. It's the story of creatures who traded legs for freedom, land for endless horizon, and silence for song. By the time whales had truly become creatures of the sea, the world was a very different place. The earth had settled into new rhythms, continents had drifted apart, and the waters that once connected them were now deep and cold. The age of reptiles was long gone, but the oceans had never been more alive. The great mammals that once hesitated at the shoreline now ruled those endless blue kingdoms. They had become the true lords of the ancient seas. In the quiet depths, whales moved like shadows, vast, slow, and full of grace. Their world was one of color and silence, where sunlight filtered down through green and gold layers of water, breaking into beams that danced across their smooth backs. The air above was no longer their home, but they still needed it. Every so often, they rose to the surface, their sleek forms breaking through the waves to breathe. One long exhale, a whisper of mist, then another deep dive into darkness. It was around this time that Basilosaurus and its kin dominated the oceans. Despite its name, King Lizard, Basilosaurus was every bit a whale. It was enormous, up to 60 feet long, with a narrow, serpentine body that twisted as it swam. Its skull was long and narrow, filled with sharp, conical teeth perfect for gripping slippery prey. It didn't chew, it bit, crushed, and swallowed whole. There's a strange beauty in the thought of it, a predator that didn't rush or roar, but glided silently through the sea, patient and deliberate. Its world was rich with food, fish, squid, and other early marine mammals. Fossil evidence even shows bite marks from one Basilosaurus on another, suggesting they may have fought each other, or even hunted their own kind. The ancient ocean was not gentle, but it was not all violence. The sea was full of other creatures, large and small, living in balance. There were early dolphins, smaller, faster cousins of the great whales, darting through the waves, clicking and chirping in the language that still echoes through modern oceans. There were giant sharks with serrated teeth, ancestors of what would one day become megalodon, lurking in the deep. Schools of fish shimmered like clouds of light, moving as one in perfect unison. The ocean was alive, pulsing, breathing, and connected. The whales, though, were unlike anything else. They weren't just predators. They were travelers. Their migration stretched farther than any creature before them. They moved between oceans, chasing warmth, food, and the rhythm of life itself. Each journey was long and perilous, but their instincts guided them perfectly. Even now, scientists believe modern whales may still follow the ancient routes carved by their ancestors millions of years ago. When you imagine Basilosaurus swimming through those primeval waters, picture it moving slowly beneath a golden surface, its massive form gliding through schools of fish that scatter like silver dust. Its body flexes with each movement, its tail sweeping in long arcs. Above, the surface ripples in sunlight. Below, the water fades into shadow. Every breath it takes connects two worlds, the sea and the sky. It is easy to forget that whales were once among the first great mammals to truly master the sea. They were warm-blooded, which gave them an edge in colder waters. Their thick layers of fat or blubber kept them insulated against the chill, and their intelligence, already remarkable, allowed them to adapt quickly to a changing world. These were not mindless beasts, but aware, sensitive creatures. They learned, communicated, and even cared for one another. Fossilized remains of mothers and calves show that even millions of years ago, whales lived in families. The bond between them was strong. As the ages passed, the great predators like Basilosaurus eventually disappeared. The Earth was cooling again, and with the changing climate came new challenges. The seas grew darker, colder, and less forgiving. But out of that change came something extraordinary. The whales we know today. The hunters gave way to singers, the killers to travelers. The ocean had shifted, and the whales had evolved to match it. By the time modern species like baleen whales and toothed whales appeared, the ocean had transformed once again. Ice had begun to form at the poles, shaping the flow of currents and food. Tiny organisms called krill filled the cold waters in massive numbers, and the largest creatures ever known evolved to eat them. Instead of teeth, they grew comb-like plates called baleen, using them to filter food from the water. They no longer hunted, they grazed. Gentle giants, feeding in silence. There's something deeply peaceful about that evolution. From predator to wanderer, from hunter to guardian of the sea. The ancient ocean, once filled with fear and struggle, had become a home to creatures that lived in harmony with it. When you listen to whale songs today, you are hearing something ancient. Older than human civilization, older even than most species alive now. The low, haunting sounds that drift through the water can travel hundreds of miles. They are echoes of a time when their ancestors ruled a warmer Earth, when Basilosaurus glided through green seas and the continents were still finding their shape. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine that world. The smell of salt air, the slow rise of the tide, the deep hum of the ocean. Beneath the surface, a shadow moves. A giant, ancient whale, its tail sweeping gracefully, its heartbeat steady and slow. It dives deeper, where the sunlight fades, and the world grows quiet. The only sound is the echo of water and the memory of time. Even now, when modern whales pass through the Southern Ocean near Antarctica, they move through the same waters their ancestors once ruled. Beneath them lie bones buried in silt, remnants of Basilosaurus, of early dolphins, of forgotten species whose names we may never know. But their legacy remains, carried in every song, every breath, every flick of a fin. The ocean remembers. It always does. The change began quietly. There was no great storm, no sudden shift, just a gradual cooling of the world. It started at the poles, where the sun lingered less and the nights grew longer. The oceans began to feel it first. Their surface chilled, their currents shifted, and the rhythm of life changed with them. In those days, whales were already masters of the sea. They had adapted beautifully to their watery world, their bodies streamlined, their lungs deep, their minds attuned to the song of the ocean. But when the earth began to grow cold, even they had to learn new ways to live. The ice came slowly at first, thin sheets forming at the edge of the southern seas, melting in the summer, returning in the winter. Then, over thousands of years, those sheets grew thicker, heavier, until they covered the poles like great white crowns. The birth of Antarctica as we know it had begun. The warm, green world that once surrounded the southern continent was gone. The forests vanished, buried beneath frost and time. The rivers froze. The ground turned to rock and ice, and the creatures that had once walked there disappeared. Only the sea remained alive, and even that world was changing fast. Whales, ever the wanderers, began to follow the shifting lines of food and warmth. The great baleen whales, descendants of those ancient hunters, learned to travel vast distances between the equator and the poles. They followed the seasons, chasing the bloom of plankton and krill that appeared in the brief Antarctic summer. It was a dangerous journey, but they were built for endurance, for the long passage through cold and silence. Under the frozen sky, the ocean became a world of sound and shadow. The ice creaked and groaned, whales sang deep beneath it, and the light above shimmered like ghosts through the water. To the whales, it was not a dead world. It was a different kind of alive. The cold had made them stronger, more connected to the pulse of the sea. In those frozen waters, survival required balance. The whales' thick blubber kept them warm, their slow metabolism conserved energy, and their songs carried farther than ever before. Sound became their lifeline. A whale's call could travel hundreds of miles through the icy deep, reaching others it could not see. The ocean had become too vast, too dark, for sight alone. Communication was everything. Somewhere below the ice, a blue whale, the largest creature to ever live, glided silently through the dark water. Its heart, the size of a small car, beat slowly and steadily. Each exhale sent a faint cloud of bubbles toward the surface. It moved through a world that was cold and empty to human eyes, but to the whale it was full of life. Every vibration, every echo, every shift in pressure told it something about its surroundings. It was a creature perfectly made for this frozen kingdom. The cold didn't kill life. It reshaped it. New ecosystems bloomed in the sea beneath the ice. Tiny creatures adapted to the darkness thrived in the nutrient-rich waters. Fish and seals followed, and the whales followed them. The Antarctic became a cycle of life built on rhythm and endurance, a world that slept and woke with the sun. Imagine that world. Endless night, the faint light of the moon reflecting off a field of ice, and somewhere far below, the haunting call of a whale echoing through the dark. The sound is deep, long, and ancient. It bounces off the ice, drifts for miles, and fades into stillness. The ocean answers back, a whisper, a second voice, and for a moment, the silence of the world feels full again. Whales became the keepers of this frozen sea. Their migrations shaped the balance of the ocean itself. When they dove deep, they stirred the nutrients that fed plankton. When they returned to the surface, they brought life with them. Even their breathing, the rise and fall of air, helped circulate the ocean's energy. They were no longer just inhabitants of the sea, they were its guardians. And yet, the age of ice was both beautiful and harsh. Many species didn't survive. The cold claimed creatures that couldn't adapt, and the world above became quiet and pale. But below the ice, life continued. Slower, quieter, but steady. Whales adapted, enduring what others could not. Their songs grew deeper, their journeys longer, and their bond with the ocean unbreakable. There's something timeless in that image. Whales moving beneath the ice, gliding through a world of blue shadows, their songs echoing through the dark. They are reminders of how life persists, how it bends without breaking, how it learns to thrive even when everything changes. The ocean beneath the Antarctic ice is still full of those same songs today. Modern whales travel the same paths, guided by instincts older than humanity itself. They follow the pull of the seasons, the shifting of currents, the rhythm of a planet that has frozen and thawed countless times. The world may change, but their story continues, one heartbeat at a time. So, when you picture Antarctica now, a white desert at the end of the world, remember the life beneath it. The whales still swim there, silent and patient, just as they have for millions of years. The ice above may seem lifeless, but below it, the ocean breathes. And in that breath, the memory of ancient seas still lingers. In the dark ocean, where sunlight barely touches, sound becomes everything. Down there, sight is almost useless, and the silence can feel infinite. But whales, long ago, found a way to fill that silence, not with chaos or noise, but with music, slow, deep, and haunting. The ocean became their concert hall, and the songs of giants began. Whales don't sing the way humans do. Their songs are made of echoes, vibrations, and deep tones that ripple through the water like heartbeats. Some notes are so low that humans can barely hear them, while others rise and fall like waves. Each sound carries across hundreds of miles, traveling through the water faster and farther than any voice on land ever could. It's strange to think about it. These massive creatures, gliding through the dark, sending songs that can cross entire oceans. Some scientists believe they sing to communicate. Others think it's a form of navigation, like a map of sound. And some suggest it's something deeper, a way to express emotion, to connect, to remember. Because the truth is, even now, we don't fully understand why whales sing. The most famous of these singers is the humpback whale. Its songs are long and complex, made up of repeating patterns that can last for hours. They aren't random. They have rhythm, structure, and beauty. And what's even more fascinating, every few years the song changes. Slowly, new notes appear, old ones fade, and the melody evolves, spreading through the population as if all the whales are learning together. Imagine that for a moment. An entire species sharing a song that drifts across oceans, changing with the seasons and time. It's as if the ocean itself is alive with memory. Each new melody carries echoes of the old, stretching back through generations. It's not just communication, it's culture. Even the largest of all, the blue whale, sings. Its call is deep enough to shake the water itself, a low rumble that can travel for hundreds of miles. To another whale, it's not just sound, it's presence. It says, "I am here." It might mean more. A warning, a greeting, a call for companionship in the vast emptiness of the sea. But whatever the meaning, it is ancient and powerful. Beneath the Antarctic ice, those songs are amplified by the frozen surface above. The sound waves bounce and echo, creating a haunting chorus that seems endless. Scientists who have recorded these sounds describe them as both eerie and beautiful, like listening to the heartbeat of the earth itself. Long before humans existed, before words, before music, whales were already singing. Their songs are among the oldest languages in the natural world. Some researchers believe certain species may even recognize individual voices, remembering them for years. A mother whale's call, for example, can guide her calf through miles of ocean, helping it navigate through dark waters until it learns the path on its own. Sound is survival. It's how whales find food, avoid predators, and stay connected in a world too vast to see. But there's something poetic about it too. The deep tones of their songs can slow the human heart rate, calm the mind, and make you feel something you can't quite explain. A mix of awe and melancholy, as if listening to a memory too ancient to fully understand. Close your eyes and imagine being underwater, deep enough that everything is blue and silent. Then, from somewhere far away, a sound begins. A slow rise, a deep pulse, and a long note that vibrates through your chest. Another sound answers it. Then another. It's like the ocean is breathing through music. The notes overlap, drift, and fade, but they never stop completely. Somewhere, a whale is always singing. What's even more fascinating is that these songs aren't random in their timing. In many species, only the males sing, often during migration or mating seasons. It's a way of saying, "I am strong, I am here, I am alive." But even that explanation doesn't feel complete. There's something more soulful about it, something that speaks to the mystery of existence itself. Some scientists have suggested that the earliest whale songs began as simple communication between mothers and calves, soft clicks and hums that grew more complex over time. As whales evolved larger brains and deeper social structures, those sounds became richer, layered, emotional. It's not hard to imagine a young whale, centuries ago, learning its first song from its mother, and that melody passing down through generations. In a way, whale songs are a form of time travel. The song a humpback sings today may carry fragments of patterns created millions of years ago, a rhythm from an ancestor who once swam in warmer seas, or a note shaped by the echo of ancient ice. When you listen to recordings of whale songs, there's a sense of scale that's hard to put into words. You realize how vast their world is, and how small we are in comparison. The ocean stretches endlessly, and yet, within it, these voices find each other. They find harmony in distance, connection in silence. Maybe that's why whale songs feel so peaceful. They remind us of something fundamental, the need to be heard, the desire to reach out across the dark and know that someone, somewhere, is listening. So, when the night is quiet and you hear the soft rhythm of the sea in your mind, think of them, the giants who sing in the deep. Their voices still travel through the water, through the ice, through time itself. The same songs that echoed under prehistoric skies now ripple through modern oceans, unchanged in spirit. They are the poets of the sea, the guardians of silence, the eternal singers beneath the waves. Beneath the frozen crust of Antarctica, the ocean is alive in ways few can imagine. It's a place of stillness and lightless beauty, a world that never truly sleeps. The ice above creaks and sighs, expanding and contracting with the temperature, its voice deep and hollow, like the slow groaning of an ancient planet. And below that white ceiling, the water stretches endlessly, glowing faintly with bioluminescent life. In that quiet kingdom, whales drift. Their silhouettes move through beams of pale green light, their massive bodies leaving trails of bubbles that rise toward the frozen roof. To us it might look cold, empty, even hostile. But to them, it's home. The water here is clearer than almost anywhere else on Earth. If you could see it, it would look like liquid glass, a deep sapphire blue fading into black. The temperature hovers near freezing, but whales are built for it. Their thick blubber insulates them completely, keeping warmth locked deep inside. Beneath the ice, their movements are slow, deliberate, almost meditative. They don't rush, they glide. Every sound echoes in this place. The crack of distant ice, the faint hum of moving water, the pulse of a whale's song. Each one travels for miles. In the stillness, those sounds weave together, forming a quiet symphony. The whale's low-frequency calls bounce off the ice and return, helping them map the frozen landscape around them. Down here, sight doesn't matter much. The whales rely on sound and instinct. A mother and her calf swim side by side, their movements perfectly in sync. The calf, small and curious, nudges her belly, learning to rise and breathe through the narrow gaps in the ice above. Each exhale sends up a brief plume of bubbles, shining faintly before vanishing into the dark. The mother sings softly. Not a full song, just a few notes, gentle and low. The calf listens. It's a lesson, a lullaby, and a memory all at once. Even in the coldest, darkest waters, life is tender. In the rare light of Antarctic summer, when cracks in the ice widen and sunlight spills through, the world below transforms. Rays of gold and blue dance through the water, illuminating drifting snow-like particles. Tiny organisms, plankton, krill. These form the foundation of everything here, the invisible life that feeds the giants. Whales rise from the deep to feed, mouths open wide, filtering clouds of krill through their baleen. Each gulp contains thousands of tiny lives. It's the cycle of survival, quiet and eternal. For a few short months, the ocean bursts with movement. Seals, penguins, fish, and whales all gather beneath the ice's edge, where food is abundant and the sun lingers. It's one of the most productive ecosystems on Earth, hidden beneath a layer of silence. Then, as winter returns, the light fades and the ice closes once again. But the whales don't leave immediately. They linger, as if reluctant to abandon this frozen sanctuary. Some scientists believe whales use the underside of the ice as protection, from storms, from predators, or perhaps just for peace. The ice muffles sound from above, creating a quiet refuge. In this stillness, they rest, conserving energy for the long migration north. Imagine what it feels like for them. The weight of water all around, the cold pressing gently against their skin, the world above sealed away by ice. There's no day or night, only a soft blue twilight that never ends. Every heartbeat, every motion is part of the ocean's rhythm. Far below, strange creatures drift in the darkness. Jellyfish pulse with faint light. Tiny shrimp scatter like falling stars. A colossal squid, rarely seen by human eyes, passes silently in the distance. It's a realm where time feels slower, almost paused. The whales seem to sense this stillness. They move as though aware of the fragile beauty around them, never breaking the balance. A pod of minke whales glides beneath a sheet of ice, their shadows rippling like ghosts through the water. One of them exhales, the bubbles rising in a silver stream that glitters as they hit the frozen surface. The quiet is mesmerizing. Even the ice itself seems to breathe. Every now and then, a distant crack echoes like thunder, and the sound rolls for miles. Then silence again. The whales respond with low calls, deep and resonant, as if speaking to the ice itself. There is something sacred about this place, a sense that you crew looking at the planet, ye soul. Beneath the frozen waves, everything slows down. The chaos of the surface world fades away, replaced by a steady pulse, like a heartbeat beneath layers of ice. It's easy to forget that this world is real, that right now, as you listen, whales are gliding through that darkness. They're feeding, singing, resting, raising their young. And all of it is happening unseen, under miles of ice, in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. When spring comes again and the ice begins to melt, the whales will rise. They'll follow the sunlight northward to warmer seas and open skies. But they'll return. They always do, because beneath the frozen waves, they find something that no other place offers: silence, safety, and connection to a past as old as time. If you listen closely to recordings of whale songs from Antarctica, you can sometimes hear the ice responding, groaning, shifting, singing in its own way. Together, whale and ice form a duet, a soundscape that has echoed for millions of years. It's haunting, soothing, and endless. So when you think of Antarctica, don't picture emptiness. Picture the world beneath, the quiet glow, the drifting snow of krill, and the slow, graceful shapes of whales moving through the blue. Beneath that frozen skin of Earth lies a heart still beating, softly but powerfully in rhythm with the sea. When the ice begins to crack and the first light of spring breaks through the long Antarctic night, something stirs deep within the whales. It's not a thought, not a plan, more like a memory written into their blood. A pull that says it's time to move, time to go home. The Great Migration begins quietly. Beneath the thinning ice, families of whales turn northward, their paths guided by instinct older than any human civilization. The waters shimmer with the promise of sunlight, and the whales begin their long swim toward warmth. It's a journey that will take thousands of miles, through deep open ocean and across invisible boundaries of current and temperature. Each species has its own route. The humpbacks, for example, travel from the icy seas of the south to the warm lagoons near Australia, Africa, or South America. Blue whales head toward equatorial waters, where their calves can be born in safety. Even the smallest of the great whales make this pilgrimage following unseen maps in their minds. The journey is slow but constant. The whales move in calm, powerful rhythm, rising, breathing, diving, again and again, hour after hour, day after day. They rarely rest completely, but they don't need to. The ocean itself carries them, its currents like invisible roads beneath their fins. Some travel more than 10,000 miles before they reach their destination. It's the longest migration of any mammal on Earth, and it's repeated year after year, generation after generation. For most of the journey, they travel in silence. The songs that filled the Antarctic seas grow quieter now, replaced by short calls that keep families together. The calves, still young and learning, swim close to their mothers, staying in the slipstream of her movement to conserve energy. Occasionally, one will breach, launching out of the water in a burst of strength and curiosity before falling back with a great splash. Then calm returns. The endless rhythm continues. The ocean they cross is not empty. Along the way, they encounter vast schools of fish, drifting jellyfish, and sometimes pods of dolphins that follow alongside for miles, leaping in and out of the water as if escorting the giants north. Storms rise, waves crash, and still the whales move on. They've done this for millions of years, through ice ages and warm periods, through shifting continents and changing seas. They are, in many ways, the memory of the planet itself. Above them, the world changes. The Antarctic sun grows stronger. The ice melts. Seabirds return to the southern cliffs. The whale's absence is temporary. The frozen sea will wait for them. It always does. Far to the north, the water grows warmer. The light becomes brighter, softer, golden. Here, the whales find their nurseries, calm, shallow bays and lagoons protected from the open ocean. It's in these quiet sanctuaries that life begins again. Mothers give birth to calves after months of carrying them through the long migration. The newborns rise for their first breath, breaking the surface in a small, trembling exhale that sends a delicate mist into the air. The mother stays close, her body circling protectively, her massive eye watching. The young learn quickly. Within days, they begin to swim stronger, their movements guided by instinct and their mother's gentle nudges. The bond between them is silent but powerful. She teaches her calf how to breathe, how to dive, how to listen. Sometimes she even hums softly, a low vibration that passes through the water like a heartbeat. It's the oldest lullaby in the world. For a few precious months, the whales rest here. The adults feed less, conserving energy, while the calves grow fat on their mother's milk, rich, warm, and thick enough to sustain them even in the colder waters they will one day return to. The sea around them glows with life. Fish flash beneath the surface and coral reefs bloom in colors the whales can barely see. But they feel it all, through the vibrations that ripple through their skin. When the time comes to return south, the calves are stronger. The mothers lead them out of the warm shallows and back into the open sea. The journey home is just as long, but now they travel with purpose. The cold waters await, the feeding grounds, the endless blue where their ancestors sang. And once again, the cycle continues. Every year, this migration connects the world's oceans like a heartbeat. From the frozen poles to the equator and back again, whales stitch the planet together with their movement. They carry nutrients across seas, help balance marine life, and shape entire ecosystems just by living. Scientists call it the whale pump, the invisible process of life circulating through motion. But it's more than that. It's proof that balance can exist, even across worlds as vast as the ocean. When you imagine them swimming under the golden light of the tropics, think of the journey they've taken, the quiet patience, the strength, the endurance. Every ripple in their path carries the story of survival, of memory passed through time. And somewhere beneath the waves, the faint echoes of their songs remain, soft, ancient, and eternal. The ocean is full of movement, but none so graceful, none so constant as this. The great return is not just a migration, it's a promise that no matter how far they travel, the whales will always find their way home. In the endless rhythm of the ocean, every song, every migration, and every life leaves a mark. The whales, the giants who once walked on land, who learned to sing in the dark, who cross the planet in silent grace, are more than creatures of the sea. They are living memories, timekeepers, carriers of balance. Their story is the story of life itself, written in waves instead of words. When you look at the ocean, you see the surface, a glittering mirror that hides an entire world beneath. But beneath that calm shimmer lies an ancient pulse. It's the movement of whales, slow and deliberate, tracing invisible paths across the planet. Even now, in a world filled with noise and machines, their songs still echo, deep and low, through the blue. The legacy of these giants isn't just their size or their beauty, it's their endurance. Millions of years ago, their ancestors stepped into the sea and never came back. They gave up lungs made for breathing air freely, legs made for walking, and eyes built for the sun. In return, they gained something else, the ability to belong to two worlds at once. To touch the surface and breathe the same air we do, then dive back into the deep, vanishing into silence. And maybe that's what makes them so captivating. They remind us of what it means to adapt, to change, to find peace in places that seem impossible to survive. Whales are the ultimate story of transformation. They turned the struggle of survival into a symphony. Their presence also shapes the ocean in ways most people never see. When they feed, dive, and surface, they circulate nutrients across the water column. Their waste fertilizes plankton, which in turn feeds small fish, which feed larger ones, creating the foundation for entire ecosystems. When whales die, their bodies sink to the seafloor, becoming a feast for deep-sea life, supporting creatures for decades. In their death, as in life, they give back to the sea. Even their songs have effects we're only beginning to understand. Sound travels faster in water than in air, and the whales' calls create invisible pathways of vibration that may help maintain the balance of oceanic soundscapes. For millions of years, their music has echoed through the deep, filling it with presence and purpose. But their legacy isn't just in science, it's also in the human heart. For thousands of years, people have looked at the ocean and seen mystery, fear, beauty. And in that mystery, whales became symbols of wisdom, strength, and peace. In ancient legends, they were keepers of the sea, divine messengers, or the souls of ancestors. In modern times, they've become symbols of conservation, of our responsibility to protect the world we share. Because the truth is, their survival is intertwined with ours. The ocean gives us oxygen, regulates our climate, and sustains countless forms of life. Whales help keep that system alive. When they thrive, the ocean thrives. And when the ocean thrives, so do we. It's humbling to realize that these gentle giants, who could crush a boat with their tails but rarely harm a thing, carry the health of the entire planet with them. Every time they rise to breathe, they're part of the Earth's heartbeat. Every time they dive, they help sustain the cycle of life below. In the quiet moments at sea, sailors used to describe the sound of whales surfacing in the dark, a soft exhale, a shimmer of mist in the moonlight, as something almost spiritual, a sign that even in the vast emptiness, life was near. That memory lingers in every culture touched by the ocean. When you hear a whale's song today, through a recording or a distant echo in the water, it's like listening to history itself. The same tones that carried through prehistoric seas still ripple through the depths. Whales have survived ice ages, mass extinctions, and human hunting. Yet they endure, and still they sing. Their story is one of resilience, a reminder that life adapts, evolves, and finds harmony even after great loss. The world they inhabit is fragile, yet within that fragility lies strength. The same is true for us. Perhaps that's the real legacy of the giants, to teach us patience, balance, and the quiet strength found in stillness. They remind us that not all power needs to roar. Some power hums beneath the waves, steady and eternal. So, as this story comes to an end, imagine the ocean once more, the endless blue, the whisper of currents, the faint echoes of song drifting through the dark. Somewhere far below, a whale rises slowly toward the surface. It exhales, sending a mist of air into the cold dawn. The sound fades, but its meaning remains. Because even after millions of years, after all the change and chaos of Earth's long story, one truth continues. Life endures. The whales are proof of that. And as long as their songs still echo beneath the waves, the world will never truly be silent. And so, our journey through the ancient seas comes to an end. We've followed the whales from their first steps on land to their long migrations beneath the ice, from the warmth of the tropics to the silence of the deep. We've seen them change, endure, and thrive. But even now, their story isn't over. It still moves, like a wave, endless and calm. Out there, under the moonlight, the ocean still breathes. Whales rise to the surface, exhale into the cold air, and slip quietly back into the blue. Their songs still travel through the darkness, crossing oceans, connecting lives, carrying memories older than humanity itself. If you listen closely, really closely, you might feel it too. That slow rhythm of the world, the soft pulse of life that never truly stops. It's the same rhythm that keeps your heart beating as you rest, the same rhythm that whispers you are part of something vast, ancient, and peaceful. So, as you drift to sleep, imagine that sound, the deep hum of the whales fading into the distance, wrapping the world in calm. You are safe, you are still, and, like the whales, you are part of the great, gentle tide that has always been and will always be. Thank you for joining me on this quiet voyage beneath the waves. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a peaceful moment tonight. There are more stories waiting, slow, thoughtful journeys through time and nature, told to help you unwind and dream. Until next time, sleep well, and may the ocean's song carry you softly into tomorrow.